Welcome back. I love the Globe and Mail headline that Mark Carney has so many fresh faces. I can't say that without laughing. Of course, so many of his candidates were from Justin Trudeau's regime. It's hard to understand how the old cabinet can implement new policies. But then again, I honestly don't even know what Mark Carney's policies are. I know for his entire adult life, he's believed in net zero and transitioning off oil and gas. The carbon tax was part of that. He abandoned that for votes. I don't even know what his campaign promises were serious or not. We're now told that when he first met with Donald Trump, or sorry, when first spoke with Donald Trump, he basically winked at Trump and said, "Hey, I'm going to talk really tough about you in the campaign, but once I'm elected, we can have a more grown-up conversation." So many things he does are sell games. He's a straw man. I'm using, of course, the language of Brookfield Asset Management when they have fake addresses in places like Bermuda and the Isle of Man. I honestly do not think that any of us truly know who Mark Carney is. And so, talking about his cabinet, it's somewhat interesting to do the Kremlinology of who's up and who's down, but we honestly don't know what they're going to believe in, what they're going to propose. I don't know if we have seen the revealed liberal platform in its authentic form. Anyhow, that's my skeptical side coming out. But let's talk to someone else who may have a more sober minded point of view. I'm talking about our old friend, Dr. John Robson, who is an author, a historian, a journalist, and the convener of the Climate Discussion Nexus, if I've got that right. Joining us now from Ottawa is Dr. John. John, great to see you again. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
A pleasure to be here, even on this topic.
Now, did I get it right? The Climate Discussion
It
Nexus?
is the Climate Discussion Nexus, yes, and I am in fact a successful YouTuber to the bafflement of all who know me, but there you are.
Great. Well, we'll have to check that out, and I'll look forward to looking at that because that is quite relevant. We were told by the regime, both the political and the journalistic side of it, that carbon taxes were essential, and if you didn't have a carbon tax, it was a proof you didn't care about the planet. And then suddenly, when Mark Carney said he was against it, the media said, "Oh, okay, we'll go along with that. Everything we've ever said about this being the key defining issue, we'll simply forget." All right. Let's start with that. Let's start with the Environment Minister, Julie DeBruce. And I don't know that much about her, other than she's from Toronto Danforth, which is sociologically probably the opposite, as opposite as you can get from Alberta's oil sands. She said she's against the oil sands expansion. She's used a lot of the anti-oil language, but who knows what it means to be a cabinet minister for Mark Carney? Maybe it's opposite day, and I just really have no idea. What do you think of Julie DeBruce as environment minister?
It's certainly revealing of the kind of the puzzle of the cabinet. Doesn't matter at all what she thinks. Canadian cabinet ministers are ciphers. But it's interesting. I looked up her biography, and she has a degree in Near and Middle Eastern Studies and then a law degree. And whereas I'm all for informed lay people having opinions on subjects, climate alarmists have this thing where they go, "Oh, you're not a climate scientist." And I'm
Right.
wondering if any of them are going to say, "Well, hang on a second. It's not conspicuous what credentials she brings to this file." But the far bigger question is Mark Carney still the Mark Carney of GFANS and of his, 20-year quest for net zero, or did he just suddenly change all his opinions in about 3 months? Because as Jordan Peterson said, either he's dropped everything he believed for 2 decades, or he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so I look at him and I think, my, what big teeth you have. And therefore, I assume that he's going to make his environment minister pursue net zero. And again, I was looking through the list of the cabinet members and trying to figure out what credentials almost any of them have for the jobs that they get. I'm thinking of the new foreign minister. I think she's had six different jobs, six different cabinet posts, none of which she seems to have done very well, and none of which she brought any particular demonstrated talent to. But again, it's all so tightly centralized in the PMO. And the other problem is, as Andrew Coyne, who I increasingly infrequently agree with, but I did on this one, Canada has a very large cabinet and by international standards. And one of the reasons why is that the executive is basically consuming the legislature. Almost a quarter of the Liberal caucus are cabinet members. And therefore, instead of being legislators holding the ministry to account, they are part of the executive branch. And they're ciphers, they're NPCs. They think of themselves as being important and influential individuals, but how many of them are going to get into the cabinet room and tell Carney on some issue, "No, you're wrong. We need to change this policy. I'm not going along
Mm.
with that." It's just almost impossible to imagine it happening. And then I was looking at was it Francois Philippe Champagne, right, who was the industry minister, dumping all this money into EVs, and then these ventures are folding up like cheap lawn furniture, so they make him finance minister.
Yeah.
What?
It really is strange. I think the obvious reason why the foreign minister and the resource minister or environment minister are the ones that is because Mark Carney has restated his belief in a quota system for women. And so we know that those are who he thinks are the best women, not the best MPs of all. But again, as you point out, it doesn't really matter when all the instructions are coming out of the prime minister's office, or perhaps, I know it sounds crazy, the Eurasia Group. That's a sort of a lobby group, think tank, uh, privately owned in New York City, run by Ian Bremmer, who goes to the World Economic Forum every year. That's where Mark Carney's wife worked or may still work. That's where Evan Solomon had a soft landing when he was sacked from the CBC. That's where Gerald Butts had a soft landing when he was sacked from the CBC. So this little, not so little, for-profit think tank in New York is really directing I think a lot of the thinking, if there's any thinking in Canada's government, will be done outsourced to New York City. Um, I think that's really weird. I think that looking at it through an Alberta lens, I'm in Alberta today. We're having some halls about independence. I don't think they give a hoot about Alberta. I don't think they're even thinking about it. And some of the choices they've made almost seem like they're trying to antagonize Alberta. There's one more choice, if I'm not mistaken, Stephen Guilbeault, the crazed plastics registry guy. If I'm not mistaken, he's been put back in heritage. I want to double check that. I may have that wrong. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Which
that is
tells me that,
correct. He's now the Minister of Canadian Heritage. And one has to ask, well, again, has Stephen Guilbeault, throughout his career, whatever else he may have been doing, has he shown that he's passionate about Canada's heritage? Does he tear up thinking about Vimy Ridge and Juno Beach? Is he proud of the explorers who traveled the mighty rivers of the West only to find that they went out to the Arctic or something else he wished they didn't do? Is he proud of the founding cultures of Canada, or does he regard the whole thing as a disgraceful colonialist settler project?
yeah,
And again, and does it matter? Because to some extent, if policy is coming out of the Eurasia Group, it's doing so because these people are like-minded. But ministers these days, they even get talking points from the PMO. They're not just told what to do; they're told what to say. And you'd think one or two of them would say, "You know what? That offends my sense of self-worth. I'm here because I've got a working brain, because I know how to express myself, because I'm an individual with something to say, and I'm going to say it." And but they don't. They're again. It was somebody talking about British MPs, but he said 95% of them are NPCs, and this has haunted me because most of them, they don't know it. What they
yeah,
think they are, who they think they are, and what
yeah.
they really are diverges extremely sharply. And then, oh, I'm in cabinet. This is marvelous. I'm a cabinet minister. Yeah, but notice the strings that are attaching you. That ought to be of some concern. And again, concern to Canadians, because one of the things that I wrote about recently about Canada's government, you think of all the things Mark Carney says he's going to do, and you don't know if he means it or not. But Canada's government is broken. Almost nothing they try to do will actually happen. There was even this tax on vacant properties that they just didn't collect, and nobody knew why. So it matters a lot more that we make the government capable of functioning again than that we utter grandiose pronouncements about things that we couldn't do even if we knew how to try. And I don't think there's any attention to that. And if you went and polled the cabinet, and I was also thinking, preparing for the show, would you invest in a company if this was its board of directors? But if
Yeah.
you polled the cabinet and said, how critical a problem is it that nothing in the government works anymore? I think most of them would look at you quite blankly, even more
Works
blankly
for
than
them.
they'd look at you on most issues.
Yeah. I just want to tell our viewers, NPC stands for non-player character. It's an idea that in a video game, there's other sort of cameo appearances by people who really just go through a routine and aren't don't have their own thinking mind. It's like an automaton. We're
Yeah, they're not
drones.
actual players in the game. They're just
Right.
programmed to have a few simple automated responses, which they will be doing
Right.
no matter what happens. So I guess, yeah, if you
Yep.
don't have teenage children, you may not know NPCs, but it's a frightening thought that most of our cabinet ministers and most of our MPs think they're playing an active role in the governance of this country when in fact they're completely passive automatons.
Let's face it, Canada's economy isn't heading in the right direction. Inflation's eating away your savings, and government debt is out of control. No politician is going to fix that overnight. With Guildhall Wealth, you can hold real, physical gold and silver inside your RRSP. It's a time-tested way to protect your retirement and take back control of your wealth. Call 1-877-8-SILVER or visit guildhallwealth.com/rebel to request your free investor kit. And hey, make sure to mention Rebel News.